and it'll give, when we create a Wakelet, Wakelet uses, again, this kind of block structure that we used in our previous, in Google Sites. The only difference is it's a small, narrow space down the middle. So when we're creating our, when we want to create our, our Wakelet, usually the way that I like to use it is for a single lesson. So let's say, for example, we're going to use this as a Pygmalion introduction. So our learners need to start doing Pygmalion in term 2. We obviously can't get to them now. We want to give them a single lesson on Pygmalion, so that they just have a basic understanding of how it works. Now, when we add a background image, we can add a background image where you can upload an image, or you can choose from a library. We'll allow you to search. So let's just search for literature. You usually get nice images when you search for that. So we like this one. And these are all free images when you're adding from the library. That's why it's useful to use these libraries. Right, so there we've added that. We can add a cover image. Again, choose from the library. Let's look for, okay, they won't be able to get us anything from Pygmalion. So if we are again just going to find something from literature. Right, again, these are all free images that we can use, that we are allowed to use. So we're going to have just a smaller version of it. This is a introduction to Pygmalion. Now, if you look on the site that we built, what I often recommend when you're creating these Wakelets is there are 4 categories that you need to look at. The task setting, the introduction and the task setting, then the content that you're going to give the learners, some sort of evaluation and consolidation, and some sort of feedback assessment that they need to complete. Now, the feedback and the assessment part sometimes can require a little bit more creativity, because you're now, again, using a platform that they don't log into. So if you're doing it in a class environment, your feedback consolidation could simply be go home and write an essay about this for homework for the next day, as an example. Depending on how you want to use it. There's lots of different little tools that you could use for this as well. So let's say, for example, we've got this. Now, our first thing that we want to add, when you press the plus button, it allows us to add different elements. You've got text, YouTube, tweets, bookmarks, images. You can upload a PDF, Google Drive, OneDrive, etc. So let's say, for argument's sake, we want to just add, we're going to add something from Google Drive. Can't remember if I added this. Oh, here we go. There's the untitled document. Has some elements of Pygmalion in it. Right, now again, I've added this document. I'll have to make sure once I'm done with this whether or not I set the sharing settings correctly. I'm not sure if I did this time, so I'll have to go double check this. Now, when we add some more elements, what the whole idea of Wakelet very often is it's a curated experience, as I said. You don't need to, it's not necessarily one where you're creating your own content. So let's say I'm going to add a website that I would like them to visit. Right, so we will add this website, Pygmalion Effect, Facts for Kiddies. They can read more about the Pygmalion Effect. The Google Doc that I added is just a basic introduction as to what this is. Then we want to add a YouTube video for it. Again, it looks, I'm adding it quite quickly because I've already found a lot of these things. So let's just say Pygmalion. We don't want the full, we want the Pygmalion Effect. Let's add that. There's a video on it. And then I can get them to answer a quick, I'm going to add this link, a quizzes that I'm going to send to them. So quick practice link. Now, obviously they need a little bit more explanation of what they're supposed to do. So we'll add text here at the top that we're just going to say, please refer to the following links, read or watch, or whatever the case might be, watch it all, and then answer. Right, well, let's just leave it at that. And we're going to say done. So there's a quick explanation as to what they're supposed to do. And then we'll add here something. Once you are finished, going through all the content. Please answer the following quiz to see if you got it. Right, so there's an element of, it's a good thing to add this, an element of some consolidation that we need to add. So there's a practice link that they need to go through just to check whether or not these things that they just went through actually hit home. Now, I've used the practice link on quizzes because in this sense, I'm not trying to track these learners whether they got it. So they just need to answer it and see and do a self-evaluation of whether or not they understood it. The more your learners do it, the more they will get used to the idea that this is how they need to, if we're going to use a more learner-centered approach, the learners need to take the responsibility to then go back through the content if they didn't understand it. Initially, they're not going to do it. Initially, they're just going to run through this thing as quickly as is humanly possible and then come out on the other side not knowing anything else. But the more you do it, the more comfortable they will become with the concept. Remember, it is a foreign concept to them as well. Now, we can move these things around. So if I feel that I'd rather move this block somewhere to the top, sorry, there's a button next to it. You can easily move it up and move it around, etc., etc. If you feel you want to change it, you can delete it. If you go into the text itself, mine's being silly now. Right, so you can change the text, you can modify things as you go. Right, is there still an echo? I see someone mentioned an echo. Right, and as we add elements to this, the more tools you end up knowing, the more little things you know, we call it the digital tool belt. The more things that you know about, the more things you can add into this. So I can, for example, now add a Quizlet as well. So we're going to add this Quizlet and let's say learn some words from Pygmalion, right? So now I've added a little Quizlet that has a bunch of quite complicated, I'm going in the wrong way, add text, sorry. So here I've built my I've built my Wakelet very quickly. It is really, once you've got your links set up, what I often suggest with Wakelet is go and find the material first, have some place where you're copying and pasting all the different little links that you want to use, where you actually plan your lesson, and then once you're ready to build it, you just click plus and dump and add the link and add the video and add the whatever it is that you want to add, all these different elements that we want to add to it. Now, one thing I want to show you very quickly within this, so if we're going to go to this, let's first post the thing. When we want to post it, and this is tying into what we are looking for going forward, we don't want to make it private. Private means that it's only for me, which completely defeats the purpose. We want to make sure that we can actually share it with multiple people. So at the very least, we want to be able to share it with our learners. So if we click here on Unlisted, it means that it won't be saved in a public database where they can find it. If you want to, you can obviously make it public, so everyone can find this Wakelet that you've created. We spoke about that contributing to the global knowledge network at the beginning of the session. So it's a good idea, if you're confident with it, make it public. Unlisted, we're just going to leave this one unlisted because it definitely needs to be a little bit revised before it can be sent out. Then we click on Enable Copy. Now, Enable Copy, you can choose whether you want to do this or not. What Enable Copy means is the minute that someone finds your Wakelet, they can create a copy of this and make changes should they want to. So it really depends on whether or not you feel like adding this. For this purpose, I'm going to enable copy. What that means is if another teacher finds it and feels they want to use most of it, they can go and change it around a little bit. Now, once I'm done with this, I'm happy. I'm going to say done. Everything is saved automatically, so you can edit it and you can come back and finish it once you feel confident with it. What you see now is effectively what it's going to look like for the learners, right? So this untitled document, I'm pretty sure it'll open for me, but I don't think I've actually managed to, I haven't shared it correctly. But now one of the very cool things that Wakelet has built into it, and we'll see if it's going to work here. When you paste normal text, it makes use of something called Immersive Reader. So if we use this normal text that I have, and I click over, and I click on the icon, on this icon over here, it takes me into what they call the Immersive Reader, which means it highlights the text it's massive, so you can't miss it. When you play it, it'll actually read it back to you. I've now actually just switched off my sound for this purpose, or for the purpose of what I'm doing, but it'll read it back to you. And then you've got a whole bunch of very cool little things where for language teachers, this is great. I can highlight nouns and verbs and adjectives and adverbs so that they understand what's happening, and add labels to it. You've also got the option of changing things around. Now, this is obviously on the learner side where they can do these things, which becomes a very, very useful tool. We can add line focus to the thing, smaller line focus, slower movement. It's a very, very powerful tool to learn when it comes to reading, essentially. What they've done is they've added it into certain documents as well. Now, it doesn't work on everything, right? So, for example, the Google document is not going to allow me to use the Immersive Reader, but websites, it'll track the information. And now I've got into the website, which means if we just went onto Pygmalion, the website, I just want to show you quickly. This is now the site. So it's actually a reasonably straightforward site. It's easy for learners to read. But if we go to use the Immersive Reader, the read mode, what it does is it immediately eliminates all the other nonsense on the site, and it just focuses on the text. And if I click on Immersive Reader, it can also go into this reader for me, where I start going through it slowly but surely. Remember, I switched off my sound, so it actually reads it back to me. And again, we can go into our line focus if it's a case of learners that struggle a little bit when it comes to their reading speed, etc. So it's a I think it's one of the most powerful tools that has been built into Wakelet. And for that alone, it becomes incredibly powerful when we want to use it for our learners. Now we've got a video, which is just a normal video. If we click on it, it'll play the video for me. Right, again, my sound has been switched off, so it won't play the sound now. And then same, if we go through the entire thing, if I click on the quizzes practice link, it'll take me to the quizzes, right? It is loading in the background. So yeah, I've got my quizzes that I can play. And in this way, you're going to start using all the different tools that we've been speaking of, or that we've been looking at over the past 3 weeks, and you're going to start putting it all together to create these digital lessons. Now, what is very useful about this is when you want to share it if you want your learners to participate in one of these lessons in a flipped classroom kind of environment, not exactly a flipped classroom, but a blended learning approach, where you want them to go through the content in a computer lab, for example, but you don't want them to get lost on their way there, then you share this, you've curated the content exactly what you want them to do so that they can find it for that instance. If you want to share it, there's obviously the share button that you click on that creates a URL that you can use. Share, there's a URL, it generates a QR code. If you've linked your Google Classroom, you can click on it, it'll immediately post to Google Classroom. You can post it to Facebook, you can post it to Microsoft Teams, etc.